Hello everyone, my name is Jessica Cottle and I am doing my demonstration speech on how to carve a pumpkin for my college class. When I was younger, we had this tradition that most people have. It involved getting a pumpkin that I could barely lift and placing it on a table covered in newspaper in my family's kitchen, and still getting the table somehow messy when I was carving a face and personality into the pumpkin. Then at night, I would watch it glow in the October darkness. What was once just a pumpkin turned into a friendly, spooky squash that wards off evil spirits. Many of us seen these spooky yet friendly glowing faces on pumpkins, also known as jack-o'-lanterns, glowing on porches or even sometimes in windows during October. I've personally never seen one in a window. This tradition is not just modern. The earliest use of jack-o'-lanterns date back hundreds of years to Ireland and Scotland, where instead of pumpkins, turnips were traditionally used. Well, not only do I still hold this tradition as an adult, making me the perfect guide for this process, today I will explain how to create your own jack-o'-lantern in 3 main steps: picking the pumpkin, preparing the pumpkin by cleaning it, and carving your design and finishing your lantern. Now that we've covered what jack-o'-lanterns are and why they're special, let's go to the steps I want to carve yourself. You start by picking perfect pumpkin and gathering your carving materials, and now you have to choose your perfect pumpkin carefully. So when I pick out my pumpkins, I usually avoid soft spots like bruises, because mushy pumpkins could collapse easily and leave a pumpkin massacre on your floor and on your table. You pick one that's always firm. And I would have an example with me, but I forgot my pumpkin somewhere else at home. I'm at a friend's house right now doing this. But you look for features that are smooth and if the pumpkin has a flat bottom, to prevent it from falling off as well. A lopsided pumpkin could topple off the table, and like I said, leave a pumpkin massacre everywhere. Secondly, you gather your tools and materials. You set up at a kitchen table or outside, and since I don't have a newspaper or trash bags, I have paper towels instead to show you, because they're not as efficient, but they can still be used for cleanup. As for your actual tools, I have a couple of stuff here to actually show you. You can use a small paring or kitchen knife for cutting. Now, when I showed my examples the first time, I had a ridged knife. This is at my friend's house, so I have this pumpkin or butter knife, and that works just as well. And use a large spoon. This is a good size for one. Sorry. This is a good size for one. It's not too big, it's not too small. Like I said, it's really easy for me to fit my hand inside a pumpkin, especially a bigger one. And then you have your bowl, which this is just an old trick-or-treat bowl that I used to have. I don't use it. Usually I use a kitchen bowl, but this is a good example of size-wise. But also depends on how big your pumpkin is. Because, yeah, I mean, trust me, even if you do have all these items, it's going to get messy no matter what. But there is some optional tools to make it easier, too. Or, well, not really optional, but just there, just in case you want to actually, like, put a design into it. I don't have a Sharpie on me, but I do have a marker. So you can use a permanent marker or any marker to draw your design. I actually recommend Sharpie, because Sharpie doesn't stain as easy on your pumpkin. And stencils, if you're using stencils. You also need an LED candle for lighting, because is actually, like, real candles actually weaken the inside of a pumpkin. I wish I knew why. I just know that I think it's because of the heat being inside of an actual living, breathing squash is the reason why it does that. But now that your materials have been ready and your pumpkin has been chosen, it's time to prepare for carving. Preparing the pumpkin requires you to cut the top of the pumpkin. You actually, for use a demonstration here, I wish I had my pumpkin with me, but you would usually take your knife and towards the outer stem, you would make a perfect circle with your marker, and then you just cut very carefully in a circle, angling your knife toward it so the lid won't fall in. And then you make a small notch with a marker to help match the lid into place. Like, for example, if you're looking at top of the pumpkin, you would use your marker to make a little notch telling you that's how it fits back onto place. And then next, you must clean the pumpkin using a spoon of choice. Like I said, I recommend using this because it's easier to scoop out the guts because there's metal. Not metal, well, something like that. And then you take your bowl, now that you have your scoop, and then you use the scoop out the stew to drain guts inside your bowl. And that is going to be messy, no matter what you do to avoid it. And one tip I learned when I was younger is that if you scrape the inside of the walls of a pumpkin, it makes the seeds easier to come out. Like, for example, you cut open your pumpkin, and then you just scrape the insides of it off the walls. It actually makes it easier to carve, too. And the next option is, well, optional, because when I was younger, we would save the pumpkin seeds and then we would roast them later. Like, you can find a lot of recipes online, but my personal favorite is using cinnamon and sugar, while other people prefer, like, savory ones with salt and spices. Now that your pumpkin is clean and ready, let's move on to the best part, which is carving it. And when it comes to picking out a design, you can choose either by drawing it out using stencils, which you can actually find or print online, or just in stores in these little book things with the pumpkin carving kit. However, there is a difference between the two. Like, theme stencils like witches or haunted houses are actually way more difficult to use. While, for example, a homemade face is a lot less difficult to use. The classic designs include triangle eyes, a nose, and a toothy smile, which is something I prefer to do every year. And now that you have your design, here is the tricky part, which is carving it. What I recommend is starting with smaller shapes, angling the knife inward, because like I said, it could cave in. Another tip is to save the most, like the last one is usually the hardest part, which is the mouth. That's what I'm trying to say. Now that we can add the final touches, you can actually go ahead and place your LED candle or whatever inside the pumpkin, and then you can put it outside. You can also decorate it with fake leaves or cobwebs for an extra spooky look. I don't personally do that, but I heard it looks really cute on some things. But your pumpkin, as you can see, is now carved and glowing. So it's time to admire it. And now that we made it to the end of our pumpkin adventure, I've explained to you how to pick out the perfect pumpkin, how to cut it open with the perfect tools to scoop out its guts, and finally how to carve a design and bring it to life with a glowing light. Carving a jack-o'-lantern is very messy, but that is the fun part in my opinion. It is a tradition that's been around for hundreds of years. This Halloween or October, grab a pumpkin, get creative, and see what kind of spooky face or disaster you can make.